What's up, guys? Welcome to project number 12 of 25 beginner JavaScript projects. In this application, we're going to show you how to create this to-do list. As you can see, I already added some items to my list. If I want to add another one, all I have to do is type it in here. And if I want to check something off, all I have to do is click on this. And to delete something, just click on the trash button. Of course, just like every other application I show you how to do in this series, everything is 100% responsive. So it doesn't matter if you're looking at it on a phone, a tablet, or your desktop. It's going to look good no matter what. I created a website dedicated to the projects that we're going to be building in this series. You can find it at jsprospect.com. I also talk a little bit about the technologies that you need to become a web developer. And you can even access the tutorials directly from here. So if you wanted to watch this one, just click it and you can watch the tutorial here. If you want to learn more about these projects, you can click here. And I wrote a small article that talks about each project. You could even test the project out before you build it. So let's say that you wanted to test this one out. You can click here and you can test out the project. If you want to learn how to host your applications the way I did here, I wrote an article that shows you how to do it. So just click on this link and it's going to take you to this article, Host Your Website for Free with GitHub Pages. And here I show you the steps that you need to take to host your application on GitHub Pages. There's only 4 steps, so it's actually very simple to do. All right, before we get started, let's bring in the Font Awesome CDN. So let's open up our browser and we're going to search for Font Awesome CDN. Let's click on the link from cdnjs.com. Let's copy this first URL. This is the latest version of Font Awesome. We're going to paste it up here. So type in link and Control V. All right, let's get started here inside the body. We're going to create a container. We know that we need a pair of div tags for that. So let's give this a class name of container. And within this container, we're going to create another container. We're going to give this one a class name of nav. And the reason that we gave it that name is because if you look at the original project, we have this thing going on up here, which is kind of like a nav bar, although it really isn't, but it looks like one. So it makes sense to call it that. And of course, like you just seen, we added a title, an input box, and a button to this nav class. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to use an h2 for the title. Let's give it a title of to-do list. And we're going to add an icon right in front of the title. Let's search for Font Awesome. We're going to click on the icons link. And for this icon, I looked for a checkboard. All right, so I'm going to go with this one here. Go ahead and copy the HTML. And you're going to paste it right in front of the title. All right, now let's add the input box and the button. We're going to place those two things inside of a container as well. Let's give this a class name of user input. All right, let's create the input box and the button right next to it. This is going to say submit. And of course, this is the button that's going to be responsible for adding the items to our to-do list. So we're going to have to call in a function when the user clicks on this. So let's use onClick, and we're going to call the function add item. And for the input box, of course, we need to get access to whatever the user is inputting into that input box. So we're going to give it an ID. Let's give it an ID name of input. All right, that's it for this container. Let's get rid of all of these spaces. And underneath, we're going to create another container. This is where the items are going to go. Sorry about that. All right, let's give this a class name of container. And within this container, we're going to create another container. Let's give this one a class name of to-do items. So this is where the actual items are going to go. And that's going to be it for the HTML. For the CSS, let's start by removing the default padding and margin. So we're going to set padding to 0 and margin to 0. We're also going to use box sizing border box. In the body, we're going to start by changing the font family, but I don't want to use any of the built-in fonts. So we're going to search for the Google Font API. Let's click on the second link. Go ahead and choose a font that you want to use, or if you know the name of it, you can type it up here. I'm going to go with this one. Click select this style, import, copy the contents within these style tags, and you're going to paste it up here. And to actually use the font, you actually have to copy this as well. Alright, so now our text has this font family. Now let's change the background color. We're going to use background image together with linear gradient. This is going to travel to the right. Go ahead and choose 2 different colors that you want to use. I'm going to go with E22, 865. And for the second color, I'm going to use 37, AD, CD. I'm also going to change the color of the font to white. For the container, let's add a border just so we can see the changes that we're making here. All right, we're going to give it a width of 95%, and let's place this container in the center with margin auto. For the nav class, we're going to use display flex to turn it into a flex box, and we're going to use justify content space between. This is going to place the title on the left and the input box and the button on the right. We're also going to use flex wrap. This is going to make it responsive, so as soon as the title hits the input box is going to go under the title. Let's also change the width of this container to 100%, and let's give it a margin on the top and the bottom of 25 pixels, but 0 pixels on the left and the right. For the H2 that is holding the title, we're going to change the font size to 2 rem. For the user input container, which is the one that is holding this input box, we're going to start by adding a border. Once again, this is just going to help us see what we are doing here. Now let's change the width of this to 350 pixels, and let's also use text align center to place this input box and button in the center of this container. All right, now for the actual input box within this container, we're going to change the width to 80%. So it's going to take up 80% of 350 pixels, which is the size of the container. Let's remove the outline. And let's give it a padding of 8 pixels. And also a border of 1 pixel solid light gray. And I also wanted to have round edges on the top left, 5 pixels, and also on the bottom left. And we're also going to add an effect to the input box, so when you click it, it's going to be highlighted. But we don't want that effect to take place automatically. We want it to take a little bit. So we're going to add this transition here. And I'm just copying and pasting it from the original project. This is just going to make sure that as soon as you click this, the outline doesn't happen automatically. And this is just accounting for all of the different browsers. So go ahead and copy that. All right, now let's add the focus effect. So this is going to be just a box shadow. Let's go with 0, 0, 5 pixels, and we're going to go with this pinkish reddish colors that we used in the background here. So now when we click on this, notice that there's a box shadow there. And let's make it pop a little bit more by adding a border of 1 pixel solid, same color. So now when we click on this, you can see the focus effect a little bit more. All right, we took care of the input box. Now let's take care of the button. We're going to start by using a cursor pointer. This is going to give it this little hand effect when you hover it. Let's also give it a padding of 8 pixels to match the input box and a width of fit content. We're going to give it a transition of 1 second, and that's because we're going to add a hover effect, but we don't want that effect to happen automatically. We want it to take 1 second. Let's also add an outline of none. Let's change the background color to light gray. We're also going to add a border, 1 pixel solid, light gray, just like we did with the input box. And for this one, we want it to have round edges as well, but only on these 2 sides. So we're going to use border top right radius, 5 pixels, and border bottom right radius, 5 pixels. All right, let's add the hover effect to the button. So when you hover it, we want to change the color to transparent. And we also want to change the color of the font of the button to white. So now when we hover it, it's transparent and the font is white. All right, for the to-do items container, we're going to change the width to 500 pixels, and we're going to use margin auto to place it in the center. For the actual items, you won't be able to see these changes because we don't have any items in here. We're going to add them dynamically with JavaScript, but this is basically what they're going to look like. So this is going to be 1 item. All right, we're going to turn this into a flexbox. And the reason we're doing this is because if you add something like, let's say you got to do your homework, then notice that this is on this side and these icons are on this side. So this is basically the same thing that we're doing here, where we have one thing on this side and the other thing on this side. So that's why we're going to use a display flex within this item container. And just like we did with our nav, we're going to use justify content, space between. All right, let's change the width of this item container to 100%. Let's give it a height of auto. And this is just in case the user has a long to-do item. So if it takes multiple lines, we want this to adjust, or we want the height to adjust to however big whatever they're typing into the container is. All right, let's give it a border radius of 2 pixels. And let's give it a padding of 16 pixels. So this padding is basically what you see on the bottom. You see how there's space, and also on the top, and on this side as well, and also on this side. So that's what that padding is doing. And let's change the color of the text to black, but not too dark. So we're going to go with this hex of 45, 45, 45. And let's also use margin top. That way our item containers aren't too close to each other. So notice that there's a little space between. That's what this margin top is doing. Let's also change the font size. We're going to go with 1 rem, which is equivalent to 16 pixels. And notice that the text here, even though we typed it in lowercase letters, it comes out in uppercase letters. So we're using text transform uppercase. And notice that there's the highlight effect, the same one that we added to the input box is the same effect that we're getting here, only this is happening on a hover. But notice that it's not happening right away, just like the effect that we added to this input box. So in order to be able to do that, we have to copy this transition here. So we're going to copy that and we're going to paste it in here. All right, let's add the hover effect. So we'll use box shadow 00. For this one, we're going to go with 20 pixels to make it a little bit more, to make it stand out a little bit more. And let's go ahead and add the border as well. And the last thing we're going to do is add two icons. So these are two icons that we're going to add. But notice that when we hover them, they have the cursor pointer effect, and they're also not that close to each other. So let's add that cursor pointer. And also we're going to give them a margin on the left and the right of 5 pixels. All right, this looks good. Now let's just make sure that this looks good on a phone as well. So we're going to go over to responsive design testing. Let's go ahead and just paste that in there. And of course, this is the original project, so I know that looks good already, but this is basically how we want this project to look. So we're going to add the features to make our project to look just like this. So it's going to be responsive. Doesn't matter if you're on a different screen size. So let's add some media queries in here. So this first one is going to be activated at 768 pixels. We're going to start by, let me actually switch over to this one here. So we're going to start by using the Flexbox feature of align items center. And we're also going to use flex direction column. All right, so as you can see, that placed that in the center. Now for the H2 element, we want it to separate a little bit from the input box so it's not so close together. So we're going to use margin on the top and the bottom of 10 pixels. And for the user input, at this point, we want to change the width to 100%. For the to-do items container, we're also going to change the width to 100%. All right, we're going to add another media query for a max width of 480 pixels. At this point, we want to change the width of the input box to 74%. Let's go ahead and copy this. And we're going to add another media query for 320 pixels. At this point, we want to change the width of the input box to 60%. Let me go ahead and remove these borders here. All right, and that's going to be it for the CSS. All right, we're going to start our JavaScript by getting access to 3 different things. The first one is the container where our to-do list items are going to go. We gave that a class name of to-do items. We also want to get access to this input box, which we gave an ID of input. And we also want to get access to this trash icon. This one is going to be responsible for deleting these items off the list. All right, before we proceed though, let's go over to our CSS, and I actually forgot to add a feature to this item class. So just go in here and type background color white. All right, now let's get access to the container that's going to hold the to-do list items. To get access to it, we're going to use get elements by class name. We gave this a class name of to-do items and it's the only class with that name, so we're going to add a 0 there. Now let's get access to the input box. For this one, we're going to use get element by ID, and we gave that a name of input. We can shift alt down to copy this. This is going to be the trash icon, and we're going to give that one a name of trash. All right, now let's add an event listener to the input box so the user can click on the enter key to add an item to the list, as opposed to always having to click on the submit button. So we're going to use add event listener. This is going to be activated on key down. Let's type in function event. Let's create an if statement. So if the key that the user clicks on is the enter key, then we're going to call in a function called add item. And we're going to create that function now. All right, so in here we're going to create this class, this item class. So each time that we create one of those, that's going to be equivalent to one of these here. So let's go ahead and create a div. We're going to call it div parent. To create it, we're going to use document, create element, and this is going to be a div. We're actually going to create 2 of these, so we can shift alt down, and we're going to change the name of this one to div child. The reason we created 2 divs is because one of them is the entire thing, and the other one, the div child, is the one that's holding these 2 icons. So we're going to use display flex, justify content inside of this container. Well, we actually already added those features in here. See the display flex, justify content, space between. But if we want these 2 icons to be on this side and the to-do list name to be on this side, then we have to add these inside of a div. So that's exactly what we did up here. Remember, we added the title and we added the input box and the button inside of a div element, and that allowed us to use flexbox and justify content space between, and that put this on this side and this on this side. So we're going to use the same concept inside here. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, I think it'll start to clear up as we move on here. Now let's create the check icon. So this is going to be an I element. We can shift alt down to copy this, and we can change the name to trash icon. All right, let's start with the div parent. We're going to give that a class name of item. All right, so inside of this div parent, we're going to create another div. Let's add quotes and quotes in here as well, 2 addition symbols, and this is where the name of our to-do list item is going to go. So input value. All right, that's that. Now we have to create our 2 icons. So we're going to start with the check icon. We're going to give this a class name of, let me show you. So we're going to go back to font awesome. Let's click icons, and I'm going to search for a check. So this is the one that I used. So I clicked on this, and notice the name is FastFood Check Square. So we don't really need to copy this. All we need is that class name, because we already have font awesome here. We already have it installed. All right, so we just need the name to create it dynamically. So we're going to type in FastFood Check Square. We're going to change the color of it. So we're going to use style, color, and when you first see it, we want it to be light gray. But when you click on it, we want it to turn a different color. So we're going to use check icon, add event listener. So when you click it, we're going to change it into a different color. So let's use check icon, style, color. Go ahead and go with whatever color you want. when I click it, I want it to turn lime green. So when I click this, it's going to turn lime green. All right, now that the check icon is all finished, we're going to add it to the div child. To add it, we're going to use append child and just type in the name check icon. All right, we're all done with the check icon. Now we're going to do the same thing to the trash icon. So let's change the class name, and let me show you the class name for that one. So for that one, I searched for trash, clicked on this one, and that one has a class name of fast foot trash. So that's what we're going to go with. Okay, fast foot trash. All right, let's change the color of this one as well. For this one, we're going to go with dark gray. And let's add an event listener to this one as well. So this one's not going to change color. This one is just going to delete that particular item off the list. So we're going to delete the whole thing, so the whole div parent. So to remove it, we just use the built-in remove function. All right, let's not forget to add this to the div child, just like we did with the check icon. So trash icon. All right, so now both of them are inside of the div child, just like here. All right, now we're going to add this to the div parent. So let's use append child and just type in the name div child in here. So now the div parent has the div child, which has these two things, and the div parent, remember we set the inner HTML, we created a div with this. So this is inside of a div, this is inside of a div, and then the whole thing is a div, which is the div parent. Now we have to place this div parent inside of the container, which we gave a name of to do items. So let's type in that name, to do items, append child, and div parent. And last but not least, we want to clear the input fields. So we're going to type in input value empty string. All right, let's hope this works. Let's click submit. And there's our first couple of things we need to do. Let's actually type some real things in here. Let's delete that one. Let's check this one, delete this one, and delete this one. And that's how you create this to-do list. Hope you guys enjoyed this. I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.